Awesome. Raphaël.
Thank you. Okay, so this talk will be in two small parts. I'll try to keep it quite short. So it's about entering the infinite garden. So also said how anyone can cultivate contribution. So without going into too much philanthropic details and all that, infinite garden was a term that was maybe not coined, but popularized by the Ethereum Foundation and Ayami Yaguchi in several of her talks. But I'd like to just focus on digital gardens instead of infinite garden before. So digital gardens, as said by Maggie Appleton in a very good blog post, is a way of rethinking the way that we publish personal websites or blogs. So instead of having a really linear and a really timeline type of blog, it's more about having open thoughts, notes that are just in progress, learning in public. So those two concepts have something in common, which is nurturing. And in the case of the infinite garden that Aya and the EF talk about, what do they want to nurture actually? And it started with Ethereum, but I think it's applicable to many other systems. But it's basically the fact that we build permissionless systems, we build open source systems, and we encourage anyone to contribute in their own way, not just devs, not just backend devs, but anyone. At many conferences, there are, like famously DevCon and other ones, there are people from all kinds of backgrounds who are just working and doing experimenting with all of this. So we talk about open systems, open source, permissionless, which is kind of open access. And this, is it really open in general when we see that events like this have tickets that are hundreds of dollars to enter, and that you have many events that are very selective. And for example, there was this Zuzadu event that was basically a pop-up city, but because there is limited space, there was invites only. And so in that regard, I think openness is a bit sometimes forgotten about, but hopefully we have other things, such as, for example, this event, which is really open to anyone to come. We have also open hardware. We can write code that is open source, of course. And also academic research is famously open. We want to publish everything, have open data, open access is things that we see more and more. So this is kind of a way to describe the openness of the infinite garden, as they call it. And for anyone to enter is just trying to combine something they're good at or they love, and with some contribution spirit and some community spirit. So in this second part, I will try to focus on what I want to bring. And this is a new kind of idea I've had, which is called measurement integrity. So a bit about me before. I'm currently studying physics in Liège. I'm finishing my bachelor's this year. And actually, I applied to KU Leuven for the master's next year, so hopefully my application will be accepted. And there, I could experiment with a few systems and just learning stuff, but also on the side, I've been learning about programming, more about ZK apps. So I've done one app with PSC, so Privacy and Scaling Explorations team of the Ethereum Foundation, which was basically scanning a European ID card on the back of the phone and using ZK proofs to generate proof of part of the data. So the data that you have on your card is signed by the government, but then we added selective disclosure to some of that data. But anyway, I wanted to try to combine those two interests of mine, those two concepts, and this would be my way of contributing to that infinite garden, as we call it. So one question that has been on my mind for the past few months is the following. Is it possible to prove the result of a measurement? And if so, how? What do I mean by that? So for now, in academic research, the way it's done is that some researchers do some experiments, measure it, put the results in a paper, describe everything, describe the methodology, and then put the results. So how can we confirm this? For now, the way it's done is that we just can replicate the experiment and hopefully have the same results. But this is something that is sometimes lengthy and sometimes hard to do. There was this famous semiconductor experiment that was all over the place at some point that researchers claimed that they had, I don't remember which properties it has, but it took some time to replicate it. So how could we do this? It would be nice to try to have a way to publish an experiment and then attach a proof that the measurement results are correct, which seems impossible. For now, it's done with digital documents. So as I said, we have initiatives like ZK proving, having selective disclosure of data that was on an ID card, but we have other initiatives. For example, we have ZK email that can generate ZK proof, selective disclosure, on parts of an email. We also had an effort of ETHBelgium, which was an emulator for, I think it was an NES console, which basically allowed you to prove that you run a computation correctly. So you could prove that you played a game in a specific way. We have 0xPark that also did ZK ECDSA. But all of those, I mean, maybe apart from ETHBelgium, start with inputs that are digital, that are created digitally. ZK email, an email is created in the digital world, for example. ECDSA, a digital signature, is also. So, what differentiates physical from numerical systems? So how could we make sure, for example, if I measure the temperature at this point in space, how could I try to prove that the result I got was correct? So, as I said, the problem stems from digitizing the data. So trying to convert that physical data, that measurements, into some digital one, because we know that with digital data, we can already have ZK properties. So the difference is, I think this is an idea and just thoughts I want to share, but it stems, the difference might be the ability to solve it. So when we measure something, what prevents us from just generating mock data and generating fake inputs? So for example, at some point we had Face ID, which was spoofable by using just a picture. And then we had 3D data with, I think this was Face ID by Apple. And then I think in some cases it's still spoofable as well. But how could we make sure that something is really physically there, and what's the difference? So if we find a system where we cannot simulate it, but that we can measure it, the only way that we could, there would be no way to actually create fake inputs that solve, like, our solutions to a system of equations. Because nature solves equations all the time. Whether we want it or not, we're just trying to discover it. And so one thing I thought about is maybe using systems where we cannot actually simulate it, but we can measure it in a more precise way and then check if it obeys nature equations. So if that is that some criteria that's like satisfied, we could basically have some data, some measurement data that says, oh, the only way I could have gotten this data is by measuring it, because there was no way with the current computer power in the world, there is no way that I could have generated it, and it still obeys some physical equations that exist now. So that's sometimes a bit hard to go into, to think about, but it's at least some topic I wanted to talk about. And why is also because it's my kind of an example, and also by introducing me, to say how I can contribute to that infinite garden. And this may be very niche, but at least I try to bring some two things together, and my passion for physics, my passion for programming and ZK proofs, and trying to blend them together. And I think that's famously one way of doing innovation, is by bringing topics together. So I think that might be my contribution, and the way you might contribute, or anyone might contribute, is by just taking some topics you're passionate about, knowledgeable about, ideally, and then just try to combine them. So yeah, that was my last slide. So if anyone has questions after, or just wants to talk about that topic, I'm just free to talk about it. Thanks.